Okay. Well, I'm really excited to have you join us again, Lauren, on some nutrition chat. Obviously did a cook along beforehand, but here we're going to get into a little bit more detail around actually how to prepare and how to fuel yourself for training and potential games as well. Can you just give a bit of a quick intro of who you are, what you've done, and why you are, part of the Girls Rugby Club Nutrition Seminar? Why would we come to you?
Yeah, no, it's great to be here again. I actually watched back the video there the other day, sending it out to people about the cook along. But so my name's Lauren Delany. I'm a performance nutritionist working in elite sport. I've been working in elite sport now for about nearly 10 years. From every sport, from rugby and basketball to cycling, badminton, skeleton, taekwondo. You name a sport, I've probably worked within it, and probably worked at a range of different age groups as well, from Olympic and Paralympic champions and professional athletes all the way down to young academy and growing and developing athletes too. I'm also studying, so I'm a researcher as well. So I'm studying for my PhD to become a doctor in performance nutrition. And finally, I'm a international rugby player for Sale Sharks and for Ireland senior rugby team.
Well, I definitely think you're qualified for this conversation. I mean, it's an incredible amount of knowledge that you have there, and not just what you're doing for other people, but these will be things that you, as an elite athlete yourself with Ireland and Sale Sharks, the things you're going to discuss will likely be things that you do practically and daily yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think over the years, I've kind of grown not only in knowledge and experience, but also in those practical things of, well, what works for me on a day-to-day? What are my strategies leading into a game, and how are some of them maybe appropriate for other people, and some of them are just kind of the weird things that I like on the day. But yeah, definitely it's that mix between what's the research, what have I kind of done a bit of trial and error, what's worked for athletes, and probably here's a mixture of all that knowledge and information for you guys today.
And I think that's probably really important for the viewers, is the information that you're going to share with us today doesn't necessarily, mean that all of those things is right for individuals. It's very much how you feel as an individual, what can work for you, little bits and tips that can help you and develop. So it's really important that with the knowledge that's shared, as you just said, you've picked from pieces that then work for you that might not suit you, etc. So very much today is about that, some education and knowledge around it, which could suit you as a player. So starting from the top then, why is it important that we think about how we're going to fuel for a training session or for a game? Like, why is it important to actually consider it and think about it?
Yeah, it's a great first question and a first step to go on. I think we've got to remember all exercise needs extra fuel. So whether that's going out for a short walk, or whether that's all the way to running a marathon, or whether it's playing or training for a rugby game, our body needs fuel to be able to run around, to tackle, to pass a ball, and to think on the move. And also our body needs fuel to work day to day and do all those bodily functions that we don't even know are happening. And so it's really important that the more training we do, the more exercise we do, and the more intense that training session is, that we give our body that extra fuel that it needs, so that we can be the best we can be, and we can train to the best of our ability, essentially.
And so would you say that you would approach how you fuel for particular training sessions would look a little bit different to a light day or to a game? Like, how would they differ?
Absolutely. I think it's really important that we there's almost a spectrum of the amount of fuel that we might need. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're going for a light 20-minute walk outside versus a marathon, you would need to fuel very differently. Very similarly, if you're doing a light skills-based training session in rugby versus playing a full 80 minutes of a game, those energy demands and how much fuel you'll need will be very different. So it's important, first of all, to think about two main things before a training session or a game. First of all, how long are you going to be training for? Is it 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour and a half? Or for example, the extreme is a game. It's not just the 80 minutes, but it's the half an hour, 45-minute warm up as well. That's nearly just over 2 hours potentially of training and being on your feet. And the other is the intensity. So we all kind of have been around pre-season training sessions. They're always the ones that stand out in our mind as being the most intense, the most running, there's loads of contact, and you're always kind of really, really tired afterwards, as similar to a game. So there's really intense games as well. The more intense, the longer the training session, the more fuel we need. So they're the two things that you need to think about, and that'll give you a bit of an idea in terms of how much then you need to adapt your fueling as well. And probably the other thing to have a think about is how much access you have to fuel during that training session or a game. So for example, in a game, and if we add on that warm-up, we probably don't have many opportunities to fuel for that two hours or more. Where during a game, during a training session, which might be a bit shorter, we might have some opportunities to maybe get a bit fuel in, and probably a bit closer to before that training session as well. So sometimes I like to use the car analogy. So for example, if you were driving from the top of the country to the bottom of the country and you weren't fussed about time, you would probably maybe fill up your car with petrol maybe halfway beforehand. You might stop off a few times as you go to refuel, have a bit of a break, and get down to the bottom of the country. It's the same for a training session, and that might not be very intense. Where if we compare that to a game, if you're driving from the top to the bottom of the country, you need to get there as soon as possible. You need to make sure before you leave, you fill up your petrol, your energy tank to the very brim to make sure that you can get from the top to the bottom. It's the same as a game. You need to make sure that you go into that game and that warm up with full energy stores, knowing that you probably won't get many opportunities to refuel. So you need to maximize your energy stores essentially.
I love that. I love the car analogy. So 3 really important things: thinking about timing of your training sessions and games, the intensity of them, then also where could you maybe fuel during them if there's possibility. And if there's not, then obviously that will come into the planning around those longer periods that you're not going to be able to fuel during. And just to touch on as well around hydration. So where does that fit into this? Because we talk about fuel's not just the food that we're consuming. I wonder, is hydration a big part of that as well?
Absolutely. Hydration is really important. And it probably comes back to that idea again of when we exercise, we need energy. But when we exercise as well, we produce a lot of heat because of all that work that our muscles are doing. And that heat is kind of uncomfortable for our body. We don't want that extra heat to be within our body. So what happens is we try and get it out of our body. And how we do that is through sweat. So that's why the more intense training sessions, and when we're training for really long periods of time, we'll probably notice we'll sweat a lot more because we're producing all this heat. We'll also probably notice, again, it tends to be in pre-season when it's really hot out, it's in the summer, it's really warm, that adds to the heat pressure that's on our body. So we're going to be sweating even more. So the really important part with hydration is, one, that you're starting every training session and every game well hydrated. And also during the training sessions and games that you take absolutely every opportunity that you can to replace all the fluid that you've lost through sweat. So the one question we get asked quite a lot is, how do I know if I'm well hydrated or not? The absolute best thing to do is within those few hours before a training session or a game, when you go to the bathroom, make sure you look in the toilet and actually have a look at the color of your pee. So if we've got really dark colored pee, it might be strong smelling. That means we're probably a little bit dehydrated and we need to be a lot more proactive in the amount of water that we're drinking. If it's a little bit lighter in color, maybe a bit straw colored, and you're going to the toilet quite often, that means that you're well hydrated and you can just continue with how you would normally hydrate and drink water in the lead into that training session or game.
And hydration, I think people need to understand like how important it is. It's a measure that in a professional environment, you know, before fixtures, certainly when I was on England training camp, you know, you would test your urine every single day to see where you're at, and then you can make good measures. Now, you don't need a fancy testing thing. As you said, you can literally just check it yourself, and then it's so easy to be able to change whatever current state you are currently in. So I think that's something that people just think of fueling as just food, but it's not. It's massively important to make sure you're on top of your hydration as well. Just to touch on, we haven't spoken about this, but also, where does recovery fit in? So I've done my training session, I've trained, or I've played a game. What's really important to do post that in terms of fueling and hydration as well?
Yeah, really important. You can't really talk about fueling without talking about refueling or recovering. I suppose that we normally talk about there's kind of 4 R's or 4 R's of recovery. One is refueling. So if we go back to that car analogy, we've driven from the top of the country, John O'Groats, we're down at Land's End, and we've used all of our energy stores. We're not going to be able to drive to go see our friends once we've gone to where we're staying unless we refuel. So it's the exact same after an intense training session or a game. It's really important that we replace those energy stores. And it's not just for our muscles and for moving around, but it's also for our brain, because our brain relies on those energy stores to be able to function. We've all been really tired after a game, and when we recover and we have a meal, we feel a little bit better. But also the rest of our body needs that energy to be able to help it recover. So a really key example there is around our immune system. So if we don't replace a lot of those energy stores after a training session and a game, our immune system might not be able to fight off any bugs or bacteria that might be around. So it might not be training related, but in terms of your immune system keeping you healthy and keeping you training for longer, that's really important. The second R is about repairing any of those muscles or any damage that's happened in our body. And as we know, in rugby, with a contact sport, that happens a lot more often than in other sports. So by having some kind of protein in our diet within those few hours after a training session, we can help our muscles to repair. The third one, as we touched on, is all about rehydrating. We've sweated loads, we've gotten rid of that heat out of our body, and we're probably quite low in fluid in our bodies after, again, training and games. So it's really important to allow our body to function properly, to rehydrate with fluids in those hours afterwards. And then the final kind of 4, which is probably a new one over the last few years, is around replenishment. So again, helping your body to recover through making sure in the next 24 hours that you're eating loads of fruits and vegetables to help get all those vitamins and minerals, not only to help our body repair our muscles and the damage, but again, in terms of our immune system and our brain function as well. So probably equally as important is the recovery element as it is in the fueling.
So now we've touched on kind of all the prep and the reason why and when and how. Could you give some ideas on some really simple and effective foods that you could have prior to these intense sessions or the longer duration sessions for games, during the games? What are some of the things and the tips that you give to the athletes that you work with that can really kind of support the fueling process?
Yeah, so I suppose if you're going into a training session, for example, the most important thing is to think about 2 kind of key times. One is that last main meal. So when are you having that last main meal before that training session? Usually we advise having that last meal anywhere between 2 to 4 hours beforehand. And what you mentioned at the very beginning there, Berth, was all around individual preferences, and everybody works differently. And the reason we give that range is because some people can have that last main meal 2 hours beforehand, feel comfortable in their stomach, they're able to digest it, and they're ready to go. Other people need a little bit more time. So it's really important that you know your own body and what suits you. And the thing to think about in the last main meal is to make sure that we're getting some of those fueling-based carbohydrates. So we're filling up that energy tank. And some of the best options in that last main meal are things like rice, pasta, potatoes, noodles, and bagels is a really big one in the rugby world, and cereal, couscous, things like that are all really great option. And the way I kind of think about it is trying to make sure that half of your plate has all those fueling-based carbohydrates. The other time to think about is probably about an hour or so before this training session or a game, for example, is to try and have an extra carbohydrate-based snack to make sure those energy stores are just topped up. And usually, because it's so close to a training session or a game, we try and go for something that's a bit simpler and easier to digest. So something like bananas are our firm favorite in the rugby world. For example, the cook along that we did last year, those energy balls made from oats, bananas, and honey are a brilliant option. So definitely go back and check out that YouTube video. Crumpets, pancakes, rice cakes, cereal bars, all really good, simple, easy to digest options as well. So they're probably the ones to have a think about before leading into those really intense training sessions, or more so a game when we don't have opportunities to eat during that game, and we need to be switched on and be well fueled for over 2 hours. We might need to think a little bit further out in advance of that game. So normally what we say is for the 2 to 3 meals and few snacks before that game, to try and make sure that you're aiming for that half a plate of those carbohydrate fueling based foods. So for example, we play games in the Prem at 2 to 3 p.m. in the afternoon on a Saturday. You might be thinking from maybe the meal the night before, breakfast plus lunch, they might be your 3 meals and a few snacks where you have that half plate of carbohydrates.
I think that's really important, because I think everybody just thinks, oh, just before or the day of, when actually the night before can have a big impact, and thinking about what you're actually fueling then.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, comes back to that car analogy. You might not be able to fill up your energy stores all in one go. If we remember not too long ago, that time when we were restricted on how much petrol we can get from the petrol station because there was a shortage. If you think about that, you're going on a really long journey across the country, but you can actually only get a small amount of petrol. In this place, you might need to go to numerous petrol stations to fill up your tank. Very, very similar. We can only digest and absorb a certain amount of carbohydrate at one point in time. We actually need about 24 to 36 hours to fully fill up our petrol tank in our bodies to make sure that we can use all of that energy before a game. So we normally say those 3 to 4 meals leading into that game is really crucial to be able to make sure that we've got a full energy tank before a game.
And what would you say is the right kind of, you talk about half a plate of carbohydrates pre-game. What would the consistency be post-game for that recovery?
Yeah, so normally we'd say if you can go straight to your next main meal after a game, that's your best option. So what you would typically have after a game, as we've talked about, you refuel with carbohydrates. So we'd normally get some kind of a pasta or a rice dish after our games. You'll have some protein afterwards as well, in terms of maybe some chicken, maybe some mince, like a bolognese is a great one, and then some kind of vegetables and fluid in there as well. What we'd normally say in the 24 hours afterwards, because you've emptied your energy stores and you've done loads of damage to your muscles, we need not only to replace the energy stores, but we also need the energy to fuel that repairing of our muscles. So we'd actually say for the few meals after a game to try and have half a plate of carbohydrates as well, to make sure that we're giving all our body the fuel that it needs to repair and to refuel.
I've got a really, really big question for you now. Where does Haribo fit in this? Because I think in every changing room, there's always a little packet of Haribos or a box. Like, where does sweets come into this?
And Jaffa cakes, that's the other classic one.
Yeah. I'm not a Jaffa fan, to be fair, so...
Yeah, no, I'm probably a banana and a Haribo jelly babies as well kind of person. I think that the really important thing is what we mentioned about there is that everyone's different and everyone digests food a bit differently. However, everyone's probably the same in the middle of or just before a game, in that we don't want to eat types of food that it takes quite a lot of time for our body to digest. And the main reason in that is when we're exercising and we're moving, a lot of the blood moves away from our digestive system and it goes to our muscles because we need to run around, we need to tackle, we need those muscles, we need all the blood to go there. So it's actually a bit harder for us to digest food. So in the middle of a game or just in the lead into a game, we need to have the simplest type of food. And the simplest type of carbohydrate is actually sugar or jelly babies, essentially. And so we basically need to be having some types of foods that it doesn't upset our stomach. It's really quick to get those energy stores into our bloodstream and to our muscles, which is where they need energy. And that's essentially what basically sweets are. They're pure glucose, they're pure sugar, and it gets into our system really quickly. Sports drinks are another option. Again, it's just a liquid version of pure carbohydrates. And it would probably be the rare time us as nutritionists that we'd be absolutely fine with players having it in the middle of the game or in that kind of hour or so in the lead into a game. The important part is that it's quite specific at those time periods. Obviously, we're having those sugars at other point in time. It has an impact on a lot of other things, and nothing else, our dental health in particular. So making sure that it's just around those time periods and that you're drinking loads of fluid as well to make sure that it kind of gets out of your mouth and into your digestive system.
Okay, so I'm really interested, as a nutritionist that you are, and with all the knowledge that you have, you're an elite athlete yourself, international and domestic. What does your game day look like in terms of waking up, breakfast, lunch, snacks, during the game, post game?
I mean, technically, it starts from the night before birth.
Okay, all right, we'll even go back to the night before. So, what would be your night before the game? What's your meal?
Lead into it, yeah. So for me, I'd probably have some kind of big pasta dish the night before. So typically be some kind of pasta bolognese. Would be my probably go-to, but it probably varies. Probably pre-bed after evening meal, I'd always have some kind of extra carbohydrate based snack. For me, it's rice pudding with a bit of jam. That's my go-to. I absolutely love it. And the next morning, I'd probably have two main options. I'd go for some kind of a big bowl of porridge and maybe some yogurt and a pint or two of water. And my other option would be eggs and bagels. Absolutely love bagels. And that would be my morning, my go-to. I'd probably try and have a mid-morning snack, probably some crumpets or maybe a banana there. And then my last main meal would probably vary whether it's an away game or a home game. So if it's a away game, I'd probably have some pre-prepared meal, which would normally be something pretty simple like rice and chicken. And sometimes I could have some tuna sandwiches, maybe would be another option that. Well, they travel well, but I people get annoyed if you're having tuna on another trip.
Isn't that the rule? Eggs and tuna are not allowed on the bus.
I know, I'm not. People aren't a fan of me. Sometimes if we're at a home game though, I might have the porridge or cereal option for breakfast, and then I might have eggs, a bagel, as that last main meal before I travel to our game. And then in the last, probably, I suppose we try and arrive at least probably an hour and a half, 2 hours to the venue where we're playing. In those last few hours, I'd probably have a banana. I might have some kind of a sports drink. We normally have either jellies or a gel or something like that available. So I'd probably have a handful of them. And probably I'd have a few coffees throughout that morning as well. For a little bit of caffeine. I suppose I haven't highlighted it, but again, I'd make sure that from the first thing when I get up in the morning, I'm drinking pints of water throughout to make sure that I'm well hydrated before we even start warm up or anything. But that would be a typical 24 hours before a game for me.
That's impressive. I mean, to a lot of people, they might think that's a lot of food, but it's completely necessary for the output your body is about to go through. So I think it's a really important message that, it's not about just what you have on the day. It's about incremented, from the night before all the way up until kickoff. And I guess I've known players that literally can't eat anything on game day. They really, really struggle to. And then I know players that literally could have a full-blown meal like an hour before. So it really is tailoring it to what suits you and how much food you can tolerate. But if you know that you're one of those players, so the girls I know that can't eat on game day, they'll make sure that they're actually having far more the night before. So their storages are still, building up, like you say. So I think that's awesome. So what about post game then? A lot of people talk about, post game treats and things like that, or do you just focus on refueling to make sure your body's getting everything it needs, and that's the important bit for you?
Yeah, absolutely. We're quite lucky that after most games, we'll pretty much go straight to that next main meal. So there's always some kind of food available straight away. Again, just like you highlighted, Bert, not only before, but some people after training sessions, it's actually quite common after really intense training or games. You have no appetite, you really struggle to eat. Yeah, it's really, really common in athletes. And that sometimes is to do with that rush of blood away from your digestive system. Sometimes there can be a little bit of damage in your digestive system because of there's no blood there, and then you're trying to digest food. And so for those, and sometimes that does happen for me again, those pre-season training sessions are always one that I go back to.
I think.
I know, they're etched in my mind. And so after a game, I'd go for that next main meal. Again, we typically get some kind of maybe a lasagna or a pasta bolognese, or some chicken, a light chicken curry and rice would be a great option. And sometimes after those other sessions, if it's a bit tough to digest the food, something like some chocolate milk is actually a brilliant option to have afterwards. Not only is it a liquid, so it's easier to digest, it's fluid as well, so you're rehydrating, and there's some really good dairy protein in there to help you recover. And finally, it's a great source of extra carbohydrate because of the extra flavoring that they put in there. So something like that in the hour after a training session or a game is a brilliant option.
I actually found, because I'm somebody post game, I don't have issues eating before, but post games, I just I can't eat. And that means sometimes I go from, let's say the last time I ate was at 12 o'clock in that day. I went then again eat till 9 p.m. that night. And it's incredible actually how I'm not affected there and then, but it's the next day and the day after. And it takes me longer for the next Monday, Tuesday to recover. So, even just, and that's why I then went on to just having a shake after, or like a milk-based drink after, just to start that process, because it's not necessarily the there and now, but it's the knock-on effect it's going to have on my Monday weight session or on the speed session, for example. And then I'm tired from those two sessions. So now I'm kind of in this rat race of trying to get my body back fully replenished, as you said. So it's like really important, these little tips, like if any players do struggle with these things, find different ways to be able to support your replenishment. Right, just to wrap up, because there's been so many little knowledge bombs in there, and I've taken stuff away and learned from as well, so appreciate all that. But if you were going to give 5 simple top tips around your food and fueling, trying to say those two together has been a bit challenging, what would they be?
So the first one I'd say is have a plan. So make sure that you're organized, you know what meals, what snacks you're going to have in the lead into a training session or a game, and that you have them available. That's really important. I'd say secondly, try and introduce some extra carbohydrate-based snacks in between your meals in the lead into that session. Typically, the meals are the easy option, but it's the extra snacks that are really important. In those last 24 hours, try and choose foods that are familiar to you, things that you've tried before, that are there's trial and error there. You know that they suit your body, they're easy to digest, and they're not going to upset your stomach at all. I definitely say, nerves are an absolute classic on game day, and sometimes they can be a bit unsettling. They can change how we feel. So try and stick with plain and simple foods that are easy to have in that lead into that game. So again, the toast, bananas, bagels, cereal bars are a great option. And then finally, start your hydration from the second you wake up on game day, or on a day that you're training as well, to make sure that there's no last minute trying to hydrate before you start a session, that from the first minute you wake up that you're hydrating well.
I mean, it's incredible the amount of knowledge that you've given us in such a short space of time. But I think it's really important that, you know, people who are watching this take on board those top tips to implement into your weekly structures and to understand your nutrition. And tip number one, make a plan. Think about it, consider it, talk, you know, if you're a younger player, talk to your parents about how they can support you, what you can do. Go back and watch the brilliant cook along, making those little energy balls, very effective, very cheap, very easy to do. Parents, you don't have to do it. They can do it themselves. It's that simple and really effective. So Lauren, I just want to thank you so much for giving up your time, giving out your knowledge with all the experience that you have, you know, both personally playing and representing your country in Sale Sharks, but also the amount of knowledge you have working across multiple sports and with multiple athletes. We're very lucky to have had your time today. So thank you so, so much. And I am sure we will touch base again on forms of nutrition moving forward in the future.
Thanks a million for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
I'll just press. How do I stop recording? There it is.